Hey guys. Okay, so for today's religion lesson, we're going to introduce ourselves to Saint Francis of Assisi. So each of the pages, as part of your lesson scan pages, look like this, and they're basically two pages that need to be cut in half. So what I'd like you to do is to take a moment and cut each page in half on the dotted line, and then so you should pause me and then come back, and I'm going to pause and mine will be magically cut as well. See you back here in a moment. Okay, so now we're ready to begin. I've opened up my journal. I happen to do the language arts and the math journal because I just didn't want to lose the book or get the pages all messy. You could also put this on a piece of construction paper or just leave it plain as a book. That would be fine. I just know that sometimes I just like to keep things, and if I'm going to keep them, I want to put them in a place where I'm not going to lose them. So find the picture of the saint. That will be glued flat to the right hand side. That. And then I'm going to glue the prayer of St. Francis on the left. Sorry. The baby is behind me and she's being crazy. Oh, gracious. Okay. Just a few moments ago, she was eating upside down, which is not recommended. Okay, so here we put the prayer over here on the left. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to build the book over here, and we're going to leave the prayer on its own. So we're going to be making a spine again. So if you recall, what we're going to do is we're going to put a line of glue here and then build the pages. So the first page that goes on top of that one is this one. It also doesn't have a page number, so that's why I wanted to make sure. Okay, and now on top of that is the biggest number, 16. Mr. Smith is crazy. Look at this. Look. Guys, look. Geese. Baby. Mr. Smith. It's all crazy in here. There. Gracious. Oh well. There's a lot of love here, guys. So, alright. So here we have page 16. And then I'm going to glue page 15 on top of that. And you could probably guess my pattern. I'm going to go all the way back up to the last page. So I'm going to pause and then glue mine, and then you should pause and glue all yours. Okay, so now we have all of our pages glued. Mine came a little undone because I've been playing with them. So what I've done here is I've kind of completed each page, and I'm going to talk about them. If you wish to read the pages without me reading them first, then you can pause me and then read it as I turn the page. So I wanted to start with some of the icons that we can see on this front cover. One of the things that you should know about St. Francis is that he wore austere clothing, just like St. Dominic, which means very poor or very coarse, clothing that's very, it is a symbol of poverty. It is a symbol of living like Jesus without needing too many things, material possessions. He is pictured with a halo to symbolize himself as a saint. Notice his hair is cut in this almost like a halo around his head. It's called a tonsure, and it was a symbol of ordination or being a priest during the time of St. Francis. He's usually pictured with animals because of his love for animals and all God's creation. He's pictured with a rosary because that's what he used when he prayed at the chapel of San Damiano. And he's usually pictured with the stigmata, which we'll talk about. So as we go through, you can certainly add to your book just the way that I did. You can add the words if you wish. You can add the color if you wish. You could also go back later and add that. Just it gives us I did highlight some of the words to help us to remember the important parts of this story of St. Francis. So as I turn the page, you may want to pause. That way you can fill it in and then you can listen along with me. Okay, so remember, if you want to read without me, you should pause now. Francis was born into a wealthy family in the country of Italy. The year was 1182, or 1182. So royalty or nobility is generally in the color purple. And so we put baby Francis in a purple cloth to show his royalty or nobility, his wealthiness. As a young man, St. Francis liked fine clothing and going to parties with his wealthy friends. He liked fine clothing in the beginning. You can see how very fine his outfit is. Young Francis had dreamed of becoming a royal knight. But as he was forced into a small battle, he was caught and taken as a prisoner. So he dreamed of becoming a knight and ended up becoming a prisoner. As a prisoner, Francis received a gift from God. He began to hear God's voice speak to him. God's voice told him to repair the church. Now that meant literally to repair a church that he knew of, but also to repair the church in the way that we treat each other and to repair the way that people believe in God, similar to the way that St. Dominic did that. If you think about when St. Dominic met the Albigensians, he had to cure he had to repair their understanding of God. He also heard from God that he should live in poverty, but he didn't really listen yet. While he was riding his horse, Francis would change. He encountered a man with an illness called leprosy. Leprosy is an illness that affects your skin, and many times the people who had leprosy were very contagious, and so they had to live on the outside of town because there was no medicine to help them, and people were afraid, and so they often wouldn't take care of them. The man was ill and very cold, so Francis thought of Jesus and decided to give the ill man his own expensive cloak. Look at that. There's another saint that we'll read about later on in the year, St. George. St. George is also known for growing up in a very wealthy, and he saw a man on the side of the road who was also very sick and very cold, and so St. George tore his cloak in half so that he could share the cloak with the man who was ill. So people who end up becoming saints, they really act like Jesus, and there's many times in their lives where they change and they think of Jesus, and that helps them to change their lives. St. Francis began helping people in need. One day, while praying at an abandoned church, God spoke to Francis once again. Excuse me. He spoke to St. Francis, and God told him to rebuild a church. That church was named San Damiano. God asked Francis to repair his church. Francis believed God meant the little church he was in, so he began to repair it. While he was praying, he was using the rosary, and so he is often pictured with a rosary. Francis's father was very angry with him. I'm sure he wanted St. Francis to go into business like he did. He did not want Francis to help others, so he took all of his possessions so that he didn't have anything else to give to the poor. Notice how he's beginning to wear brown now. Francis decided that he would live poorly. He slept outside, begged for food, and wore a rough garment, and trusted in God. St. Francis began telling everyone about God's love, and that people needed to stop acting badly. Stop acting badly. When people would not listen, he would even speak to the animals. As you can see here, well known for loving all of God's creation. Francis loved all of God's creations. He found so much comfort outside and with the animals. Many people began to follow Francis in his love for God and his poverty. Pretty special. Before Francis died, God gave him special wounds. Francis loved God so much that he shared a special closeness with him. There are quite a few saints who share these wounds, the wounds of Jesus. When it appears on your body, like it did to St. Francis, it is called the stigmata. And these are the wounds that they placed into Jesus' hands and feet and into his side, which I forgot, when they placed him on the cross. And it's a way of sharing in Jesus' pain as he was placed on the cross. Francis died happily on October 3rd, 1226, while singing praise to God. Singing praise to God. Francis is now considered a saint, someone who was friends with God and lives in heaven. Who's this? That's right, that's Jesus. Notice they share the stigmata. St. Francis is our heavenly friend. He is still helping God repair the church, always spreading the message of God's love. He reminds us to love God's creation and to always trust in him. To love the earth, to love the church, to love the animals, to love people. St. Francis of Assisi is the founder of the Franciscans. His feast day is October 4th, and he is the patron saint or the helper of the environment, people who love nature, animals and zoos, and families. Now on the last page, they ask you to draw something you remember. And so I drew this scene, where if you remember, there was that ill man, and he gave him his own fancy cloak. And that was one of the first things he did to show his change of heart. Okay, and at the end, it's a pretty picture that you can color if you want. All right, I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about St. Francis, and I think you could probably point out why we would honor him this week and in the month of October. All right, so make sure you listen to the song, The Prayer of St. Francis. It's very beautiful, and it tells us how we can be like God. We can be an instrument of peace. Instead of hatred, we can sow love. Instead of injury, we can have pardon. Instead of doubt, faith. And not despair, but hope. No darkness, but light. Instead of sadness, to feel joy. Not to seek to be consoled, which means to have our things fixed, but to console others, to understand others, and to love others. In giving that we receive, in pardoning or saying and apologizing and accepting that apology, we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. All right. Okay, guys, I'll see you later for more lessons on St. Francis. And I don't know about you, but this is my prayer before I go to bed tonight. Have a great day.